I'd like to tell a story about the answer to a prayer. I'd like to talk about the power of Our Lady of Guadalupe. At that time, we didn't have any children, but I said, we must realize a child is not a right, a child is a gift. And I think our daughter was a gift. Our Lord will not despise an appeal from his mother. My name is Robert Fastiggi, and I teach at Sacred Heart Major Seminary in Detroit, Michigan. I have a doctorate in historical theology from Fordham University. My wife Kathy and I were married in 1984. We lived 1 year in Florida. Then 1985 we moved to Austin, Texas. My wife needed to have a knee operation, and for that period of time we were not trying to have children. But you know, then 1986 comes around, and 1987, and we were ready to have a child, but no child arrived. Well, I used to go to daily Mass at noontime at Our Lady Queen of Peace Chapel at St. Edward's University, and there was a gentleman of Mexican background who would come to Mass there every day, an older man, probably in his early 60s at that time. And he asked me, well, you're married, do you have any children? And I said, not yet, but we would like to. And he said, you must pray to Our Lady of Guadalupe. I said, okay. Well, I knew about Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I had a devotion to the Blessed Mother. Well, I went, right after he gave me this direction, this advice, and on my way home, I drove to San Jose Church in Austin, just a few miles away from the university, and I prayed. I went into the church, and there was no one around, but the church was open. I went there, and I knelt down, and I looked up, and I felt the maternal presence, the motherly presence of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I said, well, Our Lady, my wife and I would like to have a child. Will you help us? And I closed my eyes and I said the Hail Mary. And I looked up, and I felt like I should say more, but I felt like that's enough. I entrust this petition to your maternal care. And I remember what Our Lady said to St. Juan Diego, am I not here who am your mother? Well, I went home, and I mentioned to my wife that I had prayed for this cause, and she said she had missed her period. I said, well, maybe we should test this out. And we went to the store and bought one of those home test kits. We went out on the back porch, and there it was. She was pregnant. So we gave thanks to God and thanks to the Blessed Mother for hearing this prayer. And I had a friend, a former professor actually, and he, knowing that we had moved to Texas, he said, oh, I'd like to come and we could make a trip to Mexico. So I said, okay, maybe this would be a good time. And so we drove from Austin, Texas, down to Mexico City, but my wife said, okay, go, but don't get killed. Come back safely. I don't want to be a single mother. I said, well, don't worry. The Blessed Mother will protect us. So we made our way to Mexico City, and we went very early in the morning to the Basilica, 7 a.m. Mass, and it was full. And I remember being there and going after the Mass on the moving sidewalk to see the image. And again, I felt like pouring my heart out, thank you, but just very simply, thank you. Thank you, Blessed Mother, for hearing our prayer. And then she watched over me in Mexico City. Well, in any case, we got back safely, and our daughter the due date was December 8th. Well, I knew a Paulist priest named Father Neely was preaching, and he talked about two couples, and one said for 8 years they had been trying to find a child, and now they had one. And he said, I know another for 4 years. And he said, the due date is December 8th. I knew that was us, but he said, it's going to be December 12th. And that's when our daughter was born. And we named her Mary, which is my mother's name, but also after the Blessed Mother. But why is it important to love the Blessed Virgin Mary? She is the ever-virgin Mother of God, the one who was really chosen to step on the head of the serpent, the devil. She's the woman of Genesis 3:15. And there's the Franciscan thesis of the priority of Christ, the incarnate Word. But if there's the priority of Christ to become incarnate, that means Mary is also involved with God's eternal plan, which is what the Church teaches. God, ineffable from the beginning, before all ages, chose a mother for his only begotten Son. She's at the very center of salvation history, as St. John Paul II said. At the center of salvation history, there is a woman. God planned for us to have a mother. And she leads us to Christ, and she mediates the grace of Christ to all of us. She's the mediatrix of all grace because she cooperated with God's plan for redemption. At the Annunciation and under the cross, where as co-redemptrix she united herself to the suffering of Christ, and she as mother offered him to God the Father as the mother, but also really as the mother of the Church, the new Eve, the mother of the human race. She's not peripheral to God's plan. She's at the very center of salvation history, and she should be at the center of our spiritual lives. The Blessed Mother did a wonderful favor for me and my wife, and we were blessed with 2 other children. God is not to be outdone in generosity, and neither is our mother. So I remember in that prayer, I just said, just even 1 child. And then we had 2 more. So sometimes our prayers are answered with superabundance. And John Paul II said she has a kind of suppliant omnipotence because she's the Queen Mother. She's not God, but because she's the mother of the Word incarnate, she has a kind of participatory omnipotence through grace that she received, that her prayers are always heard. Never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection or implored thy aid was left unaided. But we can always be confident she will hear our prayers. Sometimes our prayers are answered in remarkable ways, just as we asked, like I did there in Austin, Texas, that my wife and I could have a child. Sometimes the prayers are not answered in the ways we expect, but we know they're heard. And if we do not have Mary in our spiritual life, it's not too late to start. Just pray the rosary, pray devotions to her. And as St. Louis de Montfort once said, more progress is made through devotion to Mary, true devotion to Mary, than all of these other means of spirituality. Why? Because it's the most direct, it is the most perfect, it is the most fruitful, it is the most assured way. Our Lord will not despise an appeal from his mother.